evening, everyone, and good evening, Priti. Let's get started. Welcome to the webinar, the joint webinar by Thrissur Management Association, TMA in short, and Architects and Engineers Association, AEA. I am Francis George. I'm the CEO of TMA and a member of AEA. Let's start with the silent prayer. Good evening, Priti. Let's get started. Welcome to the webinar, the joint webinar by Thrissur Management Association, TMA in short, and Architects and Engineers Association, AEA.
There's some issue happening with the audio, no?
Yeah. Audio, some echo is coming?
No, I switched on the TV on YouTube. I switched it off.
Okay, fine.
Okay, all right. So, in case you missed it, let's start with the silent prayer.
Yeah.
A few seconds. Thank you. Now, may I call upon the Senior Vice President of TMA, CA Geo Job, for the welcome address.
Yeah. So, with the respected Chief Guest, Ms. Priti Jauhari, and our past President, and the person who is to preside over today's function, and President of Architects and Engineers Association, if I'm correct, Mr. Anand Menon, Secretary Mr. Manoj, Engineer Francis George, our CEO, and our senior members like VRU Menon, HL Menon, our Students Chapter Coordinator, Mr. Joy Joseph, and all the past president and the members who is present over online. Very good evening to all. And today we are going to witness a wonderful session by Ms. Priti Jauhari, who would be deliberating on the topic creating E2E visibility for global supply chains. I think she would be that a person, very rich experience in supply chain management, and presently she is in Johnson & Johnson. I think Anand Menon is there for detailing, for providing more detail about the speaker. And I should thank Anand Menon, sir, for being instrumental for bringing this very learned resource person to our TMA. I think we'll be having a feast of knowledge in this session. And TMA, on behalf of TMA, I would like to welcome our today's speaker, resource person, Ms. Priti Jauhari, Head Supply Chain Business Technology, Asia Pacific, Johnson & Johnson. Welcome, ma'am, to this function.
Thank you so much.
And I welcome our past president, who is going to preside over today's function, Mr. Anand Menon, to today's guest lecture. Welcome, Anand Menon, sir.
Thank you.
And I welcome all other dignitaries, CEO Francis George, Secretary Manoj, Students Chapter Coordinator Mr. Joy Joseph, and all our past presidents, the senior members, and all present over here. So once again, welcome everybody. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Gio. Thank you, Gio. Now let me call upon Engineer Anand Menon, the President of AEA and the past President of TMA, for the presidential address and introduction to Chief Guest.
Good evening, lady and gentlemen. I do not know if other members have joined in. Engineer Priti Jauhari, our chief guest, past presidents, members of Architects and Engineers Association and Thrissur Management Association, students, guests, and friends. Today we have an extraordinary professional to speak to us on how to create end-to-end visibility for global supply chains. As all of you are aware, supply chain visibility is the ability to track different goods and or products in transit, giving clear view of inventory and activity It enables shippers to improve customer service and cost controls through management of inventory and activity. It enables shippers to improve customer services and cost controls through management inventory in motion, proactive status updates, limiting disruption and risk mitigation. It streamlines operations, enhances efficiency and avoids delays, and also brings down operating costs. Supply chain planning has assumed paramount significance in today's rapidly changing business environment. We all know what happened to supply chains during COVID days. In other words, as I understand it, supply chain planning is the process of anticipating demand and planning materials and components to meet demand along with production, marketing, distribution, and sales. We can therefore improve decision making with digital supply chain twin by performing with an what-if simulation, advanced analytics powered artificial intelligence, enhancing multi-tier supply visibility. We could proactively avoid disruptions. We could get operational, fast, seamless work with planning and execution systems. Invite suppliers and partners to securely receive and share data on one platform. We could enhance visibility and actionable insights and respond intelligently to dynamic shift in supply and demand, prescriptive analytics using unified real-time data providers to partners, customers, suppliers. And how do we do that? Today we have engineer Priti Jauhari to tell us how we do that. She is the head supply chain business technology Asia Pacific Johnson & Johnson. She is a strategic partner for business leadership team with external customer responsibility across Johnson & Johnson business of consumer products, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, including vision. Supply chain includes planning, manufacturing, sourcing, logistics, quality, finance, and data management. Her current role focuses on digitized customer experience. Friends, I should not be too technical because my friend Ranjan said that don't be too technical now. So even introduction, I do not want to be too technical. But anyway, she challenges the status quo and believes in make it happen attitude. She has 20 years of diverse technology-enabled business experience. Priti is a chemical engineer with a master's in business administration. She is a certified project manager, a PMP and a CPIM professional. She acquired INSEAD certification for innovation in the age of disruption in 2018. She is a member of several committees. Some of them are Executive Global Network, Singapore chapter. For your information, EGN is one of the largest professional networks in the world with over 14,000 members and 6,800 companies in 14 countries. Her other interests are very interesting for us. She is a cartoonist of repute. She has played state-level table tennis. She's an adventurer, She has a category 4 in river rafting. And she's a specialty cook. All in one. Yeah, fantastic, Priti. I have great pleasure in introducing our speaker of today, Engineer Priti Jauhari, who shares honors to be part of the supply chain top 100 global woman professional list published by Supply Chain Digital for 2021, and is the daughter of my dear friend and classmate, Engineer Prakash Narvekar. Over to Priti.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Menon. I think, thank you so much for wonderfully introducing me. I feel very humbled and really honored and delighted to be part of this very experienced and knowledgeable group. I got a snippet of it as we were chit-chatting, early part of the conversation. And I must say that it feels, after, I think, many years, a very proud moment to be introduced as an engineer which is where my journey started, right? So it just felt very different. Haven't had it for a very long time into my career. So yeah, delighted to be here. We'll keep it as interactive as possible. I'll dive straight in a minute, but feel free to stop me at any point in time, ask any questions. I would prefer it to be, interactive. I'm not going to bombard you with a lot of slides where all of you would be looking at the slides and not probably, reading through the slides. So you'll not see a lot on the slides. So I promise you there'll be not a lot of read up, but a lot of healthy conversation and sharing in terms of, some of the experiences of how we've done it, and would love to hear from you as well in terms of how you've done it during your career progression. So before I get started, maybe by quick show of hands, if you could probably either physically show or, use the reactions to just tell me if all of you have been part of any supply chain function throughout your journey, right? Just so I know how many of you have, been part or worked in any supply chain function. I'm sure there are a lot out there, but all right. For those who are probably, you could just use the reactions on the Zoom and just raise your hand. That works as well. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so if I can share my screen, I'll just get started. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, as the introduction goes, I think what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes or so is the end-to-end visibility for global supply chain. Yeah. And I'll talk about how some real life examples and how we have enabled this, especially in the Johnson & Johnson context. So before I get started, I want to just take a quick brief to give you what I won't repeat everything that Mr. Anand had said, not a percent of it, but I mean, not a percentage of it, but just want to briefly introduce myself in terms of, where or I would say my work experience journey, right? So as you all know, I started off being my core of it as chemical engineering, after which I did a brief stint in the sales of techno-commercial pumps. And then I went ahead and did my MBA in operations and manufacturing. Yeah. And that's where I think that whole supply chain, passion for supply chain started, as I really went into doing my post-graduation in operations and manufacturing. Post which I have worked in consulting for close to 10 years in India as part of Mahindra Consulting, now known as Bristlecon, and then later IBM Consulting in Singapore. Yeah. And during my consultant stint, my core again has been a consumer goods industry, but I've worked across different industries, mainly in demand planning, supply planning. So all about, a core was starting with planning and then, done some technical roles like solution architect, project management, and so on. But even in industry, while my forte lies in CPG, I have also worked in petrochemicals, as you can see from some of the symbols there, Shell, Singapore Airlines, which is aircraft and maintenance, Mahindra Tractors division back in India. Yeah, so a bit varied experience there. And very lately, which is what I've spent the last close to 12 years is Johnson & Johnson. But again, my areas of expertise have been very different, but I've cut across pretty much every aspect of or every function of supply chain, i.e. planning, manufacturing, deliver, which is warehouse logistics, and customer experience a part of it. Yeah, so that's a bit of brief. And again, in J&J, as you would all be familiar, we have 4 classes of business. One is the consumer goods, which is all the, Aveeno or the shampoo, conditioner, women's health, oral care, and so on. And then we have the pharmaceuticals, self-explanatory. We have medical devices. And then we have the vision care, which is the lenses, AccuView lenses. So essentially, my area of responsibility spanned for supply chain, covering all the functions across all the 4 class of business in J&J. So that's a bit about me. I thought it'd be good to kind of, introduce myself in the context of supply chain before I get into the actual meat of the conversation. Okay. All right, let's get straight on to a power-packed sentence, as you can see here. So what does end-to-end integrated visibility for actionable insights mean? And don't worry, while it looks complicated, I'm going to really break it down. I'm going to dissect it and make it relevant to the topic that we're going to talk about, right? So as we get started, would love to hear what does end-to-end? So I know we saw that E2E, right? It's a term that's very, very vaguely or very, I would say, easily used by a lot of us, right? So what does end-to-end mean to you? So please feel free to type in the chat. I would like to hear from you, what does end-to-end mean to you, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. So please feel free to type in. I can assure you there's no right or wrong answer. And if you want to just say it out, feel free to unmute yourself and, share your thoughts on what end-to-end means to you. Anybody?
My take on that is from the raw material. I was in the animal feed industry, raw materials from different sources all over across India, bringing it to our place, converting it and giving it to the end user.
Absolutely. So absolutely bang on. And that end-to-end may mean different for different people, right? So I think in an industry where you really have end-to-end, wherein we are getting the raw packaging material from suppliers all the way to the consumers, a true theoretical end-to-end will really mean that we get in the raw packaging material from suppliers into a manufacturing plant, up into the distribution center, to the retailers and to the end consumers, right? Where you don't have a manufacturing setup, a pure inbound and outbound could mean end-to-end, right? If we are purely looking at how are we serving the customers from a distribution center, it's all about, that primary sale, a secondary sale, or a tertiary sale, which goes to the end consumer and not the middleman. So again, end-to-end may mean different things to different people based on which industry they are in and what that node of supply chain they operate in. However, as you can see, what I'm showing right now is the entire gamut or different nodes from a true end-to-end from a supply chain model. And I think it was important to kind of ground, because when we say end-to-end, it can really, really mean different things, right? And how we approach a problem solving in that end-to-end context could vary depending upon what end-to-end means to us. So if we are really looking at end consumers and how is the demand pull, then we are looking at essentially that whole demand sensing piece of how does that pull occur in the whole supply chain node, right? So I just wanted to ground. I hope it resonates with all of you. Just wanted to ground to start off with what end-to-end means. Yeah. Okay, let's get to the second part of it, which means which is elaborated by integrated data visibility. Yeah. So what does integrated data visibility mean? And I want to show you a short video here. So give me a minute. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You can hear the sound?
Mike is a regional manager for medical device supply chain.
Yes, we can.
He oversees loan kit and consignment business unit, which comprises 70% of business in Asia. Very often, he faces challenges in planning, and needs to gather bits and pieces of information from various teams in the region and in markets to answer questions such as, in which warehouse do I have the largest inventory that is going to expire in 6 months? If I ship the stock to another country, is it cost efficient? Which customer it is sold to, and is this customer among the top profitability list? To answer his questions, visibility into logistics services, warehouse operation, finance costing, and sales is required. And is Mike the only person facing such challenges? No. In every function of supply chain, challenges in end-to-end visibility are ubiquitous. Supply chain end-to-end visibility challenges are multidimensional. It can be a problem of breadth, such as coordination and collaboration across functions. It can be a problem of depth, such as from franchise level of operation to a single product. It can also be a problem of entire product lifecycle, from the moment customers generate demand, to planning, sourcing, manufacturing, delivering, to goods received by customers. The good thing is, there are many solutions to such challenges, such as broader data platform and closer cross-function collaborations. What kind of end-to-end visibility challenges in supply chain are you facing?
Okay, so I think as you watch that video, I'm sure a lot of you could relate to some of the challenges you've actually lived through as part of your career, right? So I'm very sure, you know, you're not alien to most of them that we spoke about. And more so now, I think coming out of the COVID, one of the key challenge that we've seen is that whole end-to-end visibility as a challenge has even amplified, right? With the lack, I mean, you know, and COVID was a good time to kind of realize that that challenge is something that became much more real, and having that end-to-end visibility became need of the hour. So I remember being in that, you know, initial leadership conversations where there's a lot of selling that need to be done in terms of, you know, what is the value to have that end-to-end visibility? Can we just continue to do the way we've been doing for many, many years? Come post-COVID, nobody was even challenging why we need it, right? It was like, what can we do to make it happen? And that is what probably, you know, COVID really accelerated the need and the value to bring that visibility across the supply chain. Mainly because, you know, we all know that the supply chains are global in nature, very, very interdependent, very interlinked, and therefore not having that visibility does not make a business efficient, right? So again, coming back to that whole challenge in the global supply chain, if you see some of the readouts or callouts here, it kind of would summarize, or it will resonate well with most of you, right? One of the key elements of that is, do we have the real-time visibility? Do we have data at each node in the supply chain that we've looked at in a real-time manner? Is the data accurate? Do we have it in the right frequency? Do we have the entire data coming from a single system, or is it completely disparate and we have to go pull out data from multiple systems? Is the data accurate? Yeah. Is it siloed? Is it a reliable number? Do we know, you know, why it is the way it is? Yeah. So I'm sure all of us can raise our hand to have encountered this, right? And these are some of the challenges that we want to address as part of bringing about this end-to-end visibility as part of the global supply chain, right? And I think in any business today, the supply chains, as I said, are not just intertwined, you know, within a country, but also across regions, across, you know, interregional as well as intra-regional, right? And that makes it tremendously complex if you've got to bring an overarching platform that provides us with that, you know, single one number, a trustworthy transparency or visibility, which is going to go across the supply chain. All right. So before I move on and talk about some of the solutions of how we've approached it in J&J, I just want to take a quick pause. Any questions or comments from anybody? No? Okay. So I'll keep going, and you know, I'll take the questions as and when they come up. So, oops. All right. So how have we addressed this some of the challenges that that you heard about, right? In terms of enabling that global supply chain visibility, in terms of you know, having the right data at the right time. So I think three key principles that we adopted in J&J was, first is to really define that enterprise architecture. So we came up with what is that strategy to be able to have that foundational data layer or the foundational architecture, which is going to enable that end-to-end visibility. And the way we did it is, again, it's not about a technology that will come into play, but it's that whole strategy of laying that foundational architecture. So I think gone are the days where we are really looking at that there's going to be one technology which is going to come in any organization and solve the problem. right? It does not happen that way. So the key there was that we picked a platform, and it could be anything. It could be Hadoop, it could be Azure platform, Microsoft Azure platform. So any of these platforms, they provide foundational elements where you can actually collate all the data coming from the various systems into a simple or a foundational data platform. Yeah, and that's what I call or refer to as enterprise architecture or strategy. So having that foundational landscape is very critical to enable that global supply chain visibility. Second is about defining the data governance, right? So what is the right data that we need to have? The timing of the data, accuracy of the data, how are we really going to govern the data? Who's going to be controlling the data? Having clear R&Rs is very critical. And last but not the least, I think one of the critical elements is we don't have to do it all on day one. Yeah, really taking those small and agile steps are critical to a success of having that massive end-to-end visibility across the entire supply chain nodes. So the way we did it was to really build a small model to begin with and then scale it up. Now you could build a small model either by franchise, you could build it by geography. I think that choice could really vary, right? But I think these are some of the foundational elements that go a long way in terms of building that visibility across the entire supply chain. So let's move on. We spoke about end-to-end. We spoke about what does integrated data, the importance of integrated data visibility, right? And again, each of these words are very important. So a data in isolation is really not of much use, right? And that's why I said integrated data, and having access to data is also critical, right? Otherwise, it's pure garbage out there, or it's an unstructured data which is out there. So we spoke about end-to-end. We looked at the importance of integrated data visibility. Now, if we have the data visibility, we also define in our individual context. However, if we don't action based on what the data is telling us, we can never derive value out of it. And that's why these actionable insights become a critical element. And this not just in supply chain, but this applies to across all the functions, right? So we'll talk a little bit about how some of these actionable insights can be derived out of data. And here's where I'll use a small use case. There are a lot of use cases I could refer to, but I've just picked one for the purpose of the conversation today. And I want to show you that this is a use case where it's not just supply chain centric, because essentially what happens is when we do things in silo within the supply chain, that value is not realized end to end. So this use case that I've picked up is something which has a very good collaboration with the commercial, which also has massive impact both on the top line as well as the bottom line, right? So when we say top line, how is it really helping with the revenue generation? At the same time, how is it bringing about the productivity in an organization across the entire supply chain? Yeah. So the example that I've picked here is something that we had developed around COGS. So COGS is cost of goods sold. I'm sure most of you are familiar, but in simple terms, what cost of goods sold really means is what does it take? What are the costs that it takes to manufacture a particular product, right? Which we're going to be selling. Yeah. So that's what cost of goods sold means as COGS. I'm going to refer it as COGS in the rest of the couple of slides that I talk about. So the problem that we were essentially looking to solve here was twofold, right? So one was from a supply chain perspective, and the other one was from a commercial perspective. So from a commercial perspective, one of the problem was that the gross profit margin or the GP margins were very low, and we were looking at how do we really bring about a product profitability in terms of having or driving the GP improvements. Yeah, so that was the problem statement from a commercial perspective. From a supply chain perspective, we wanted to make sure that we have an overall supply chain cost is optimized, and we look at more in terms of productivity gains, right? So how do we bring both of these objectives into having the COGS data available to be able to take the right business decisions to move the needle on driving the gross profit? Yeah. Everybody with me so far? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Please show me a thumbs up. I just don't want to be talking to myself, or if I'm going all tangent, you've got to tell me, Priti, stop. We got to go back. Yeah. All right. I see some thumbs up there. So perfect. I'll keep going. So what we essentially did was we created a dashboard, and it's more like a digital dashboard. I'll show you an actual version of the dashboard, which was essentially mapping right from source up until the customers. How does the product flow? How does the product flow physically from the source up until the end consumer, and that was done through a geo mapping tool. Yeah, so where you can actually see, so just by the virtue of having that geological mapping done, there was a lot of value add in terms of, sometimes you don't even know when you have multiple sources. And look, I'm not talking in any industry, we don't have a linear function, right? So we're talking about multiple sources, multiple manufacturing locations, so it's a gamut of network. So just having that mapping flow itself was a fantastic value add. On top of that, what we were looking at is to map the cost at each node. What do I mean by that? Is that at a sourcing point, having the raw material, packaging material cost fed into this dashboard, right? We also have the manufacturing cost. So if a product is made in multiple manufacturing location, you have the manufacturing costs captured as well. Yeah. And then we have the cost captured for the distribution cost of the product going into the DCs, and from there on to the end consumers. So, putting it all together is what brought that end-to-end visibility dashboard. So if you can see visually, you can actually go in and see that, what does the entire product flow look like? And you could also compare the fact that if the same product is made in two different locations, what is the cost to produce the same product? So I think a lot of insights came out of this, which could mean that, which is the right location, sourcing decisions, manufacturing decisions, distribution decisions. Yeah, as an example. Now, these could be with an objective function of optimizing the overall cost, right? But from a commercial standpoint, what it also meant that how do we price the product right based on all these costing decisions? Yeah. So I know I'm talking about a lot of information, but I just want to give a flavor of how a simple data availability, which goes across different nodes in supply chain, can be as powerful to drive a revenue growth model on a commercial, on the commercial side, as well as bring about that productivity of right decisions of sourcing, manufacturing, when it comes to the supply chain decisions. Yeah. So I think those were some of the value adds, as I said, wherein we were able to, from a J&J context. So when we did this, we started off with a particular franchise, and some of the I would say value adds is what I spoke about from a commercial as well as supply chain standpoint. When we started off with a small product group in the consumer division, and then we expanded it to all, and that really gave very good insights in terms of how do we really optimize those promotional prices that we are offering in a particular market. And that would even vary from a market to market. So what applies to China may not apply to India, may not apply to Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So again, what this really highlights is the power of that end-to-end visibility, how we really bring that insight into clear actions, which drive a business top line as well as improve the productivity. Yeah. So I think I can talk about a few more cases since not just COGS, but we've done that across inter-regional shipments as well. So happy to talk through that, but I'll probably reserve that as part of some of the questions that might come in. Right. So how am I doing on time? I think I'm good on time so far.
Yeah, you can go for another 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. So possibly, I think I would want to make sure that I keep some, good time for questions and discussions as well. So just as in summary, quick recap, what are we talking about from an end-to-end perspective is we need to make sure that we define what our end-to-end means so that, it's very focused, deliberate, and impactful. we make sure that we have that integrated data visibility enabled through a very robust and agile technology roadmap. And last but not the least, we really bring about that actionable insights. Yeah. And I think some of you, if you would have worked with the agile framework, you know what MVP means. We talk about minimal viable products, but I would really challenge all of you to then say that, you know, how is it that we can make these actionable insights so impactful that we move from minimum viable product to a minimum awesome product, right? So it's more like a customer delight than just an agile product delivery. Yeah. So a quick recap there, and I know I threw a lot of information, but yeah, I'd like to take a pause here and would love to hear, spend some time to have any comments or questions that you may have.
Yeah, I have one. So you talked about the enterprise data and the enterprise data strategy, right? So how old is the enterprise data that you put in place, if I may ask? If it is confidential, you did not answer.
Absolutely. So if I hear your question rightly, Francis, you said, when did we do it? How old is it, you meant, or when did we implement?
Right, the pulling in the data from all the different systems and putting it into the enterprise system, and then making meaningful reports out of it, reports or whatever information.
Yeah, so I would say in J&J we started this journey more than 5 years ago. Yeah, and we started off with Hadoop as a platform, but right now we have evolved into Microsoft Azure. So the technology keeps changing. We have refined our approach, the way we even categorize this unstructured and structured data has advanced over the last 5 years, but I would say we have really matured in the last 2 years in our journey on setting up this architecture. And maybe if I can just go to the next level to answer your question that, how did we go about doing it from an investment standpoint? I think we did a pull and a push. So it was a combination of pull and push, right? So it was not like, okay, let's bring in the entire enterprise data and have this ready for consumption. If we do that, it'll take us forever to get there, right? Because one, we will not have the investment available to pull off something like that at a foundation level. And two, we will not be able to derive value if we don't consume that actionable insights part that I spoke about. If we don't consume that data in the right way, we are not going to derive value out of that investment, right? So the way we approached it was two-pronged. So what we did was that so if it's core ERP systems, which is, so for core ERP systems or basic data, we did more like a push, which means we said, let's put it in our, foundational architecture, data architecture. We did not even go asking anybody across the region, right? It was a pure push. However, some advanced data, we were only putting into that architecture based on consumption. Yeah. So, so just when we saw that, okay, we need, so for example, COGS data, right? If we are saying that let's pick a COGS data in a particular flow, then we're going to populate that based on the need of consumption as to how we're going to use it and extract value out of it. So it was a two-pronged approach, which gave us quick value at the same time, a robust foundation.
And, it makes me wonder, how was it happening? You often wonder, how did things happen before all this technology came into place? So how was it happening early? So for example, let's say you're looking at the manufacturing cost and the logistics or the distribution cost together now. You have a consolidated view. So was it being treated separately before the enterprise data was built?
Yes.
I mean, that would have been a nightmare, right? I can imagine.
It was treated separately, and then we had, individual functions coming in, huge amount of manual Excel. I think our best friend ever to have been doing it and continues to be the Excel spreadsheets, right? And running macros on the spreadsheets, getting it together, excessive. So, while we talk about eradicating Excel, I don't think that's practical, right? Even in today's world, I think we are minimizing it. We are not eradicating it. I don't believe that we can still work without Excel, right? I mean, there are a lot of visualization tools that have come in now, ClickView, we're talking about Tableau, and so on and so forth, Power BI. But again, going back to your question, Francis, yes, it was heavily manual. excessive effort in terms of putting multiple data, a lot of churning, back and forth, slicing and dicing of data. And there was some, I would say, some amount of intelligence built in, but not in an integrated, seamless fashion, right? And then, so for example, planning would have its one-stop shop. So you go get that data from there. Manufacturing would get it from there, and then you bring it together in a, in an end-to-end fashion. But now the way we have done it, at least in J&J recently in the consumer one, is we've tried to do like a one-stop shop portal for the users, but at the back end, through technologies like API, that connection to multiple system has become quite seamless, right? So at the back end, it may be talking to many systems, but at least that interface that different functions are looking at is still a same one number concept, and that's what really unifies it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Priti, I have a question. Not one question, I have 3 questions actually.
Sure.
So one is with the data visibility, by introducing that, which is the conventional area like procurement or inventory management or logistics or the demand forecasting, which is the area in which we brought in maximum amount of efficiency and cost saving? That's my first question. Second part is, how the third-party logistic companies are impacting the whole supply chain management. And the last one is how the multimodular transport and intermodal transport company operation, how it is impacting the cost, especially in the context of Ukraine kind of thing. How is actually making it topsy-turvy for even the SCM managers or operators. So my first part is that by introducing the ERP solutions or data visibility, which is the conventional area or the pillars of SCM, is getting maximum benefit or improvement as far as the company is concerned.
Yes. So I'll talk a bit on, you asked 3, right? So whether it's procurement, it's distribution, whether it's demand sensing, I would not say which one got maximum. We have seen across all 3, and I'll give examples, right? So for example, in demand planning, and again, I'll give a consumer goods example. So in demand planning, again, in consumer goods, right now we are seeing, let's pick a market like China, heavily e-commerce driven, right? More than 60% is e-commerce driven. So there we put in demand sensing. So what we are really looking at is not just primary sales, we are looking at secondary and tertiary sales data.
Okay.
So being able to bring in that demand sensing, we are really using machine learning algorithms to be able to bring in. What that brought in was a forecasting accuracy improvement in the order of 20 to 30%, right? Just to give you an idea. And even promotional SKUs would have a forecasting accuracy being increased to the order of that, which is huge, right? So, and that might differ from what you would see in Southeast Asia.
Country to country, okay.
Country to country in the business context, right? So I wouldn't generalize it to say that it will, what works for China will work for India all over. And that's why I gave you a very specific example, which is heavily e-commerce driven.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that's on the demand sensing piece. On the distribution, we did see a tremendous saving. I'll pick again an example there, right? So, and I'll pick an example of India, because I know all of you will appreciate that. So what we did was that bringing that visibility, we put in solutions like transport management solutions, right?
Okay.
Which really is talking about how do we do the container load utilization, right? So how did that really impact was that at least I would say 60% of the non-value added, wherein you are having these last minute schedule changes, you're not making sure that it's not a full truckload. I think 60% reduction was there. Overall, I would say about 3% improvement in the distribution cost, right? Or reduction in the distribution cost is what we saw in a market like India. Yeah. So again, that would probably correlate to something what Indonesia has, because they also have a complex network when you look at distribution, right? So, I mean, quite relatable there. And I would also say that, again, types of products will also make that cost saving different, because whether the product is, say, voluminous. So if the product is very voluminous, then, the truck loading requirements are very different as compared to, a totally different product type, which is probably not as voluminous, but it has, a cold chain kind of requirement. So really depends on what kind of a product it is. But yes, we did see significant savings on distribution as well. Yeah. So hope that answers the first part. So I would say it was both, all aspects, but that really depends on what initiatives.
Market to market, which country and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And I think the sheer automation itself brought in a lot of value, right? And I want to call that out because when we do this visibility, the fact that we have that data available about our entire distribution data available or the demand sensing, that automation piece itself did bring about, move the needle. And I know that it's not easy to, I would say, define the ROIs or NPV on an automation, right? But it only comes after a few years. But even that was a key element of digitalization. Yeah. All right. On to your second question, I think it was about the 3PL, right? How are they?
Logistics, see the outsourced logistics, because I've seen the trend like almost logistics companies are almost taking over the entire SCM operation over a period of time. It was like, I was owning a truck, then contracting a truck, then a multimodal transportation system. Now they're saying, I will do the packaging, I will do the demand forecasting, I will do everything. Ultimately, like McDonald's of the world is operating like that only. They only give what is the burger process and what is the burger standard. Balance everything is done by the is it fifth level. No? It's almost like that.
Yes, yes. And you're absolutely bang on. And at least I think I can speak for MNCs like us. We would want the 3PLs to be, advanced on the digital journey. And why do I say so? Even in our business, I would say more than 95, I'll be accurate to say probably 95 to 98% we are into, we don't manage the logistics, right? It is managed by third party. It's outsourced. So the way we partner with them is on initiatives like, we would want them to have advanced technologies, because otherwise that partnership or that digitalization journey is impacted negatively, right? So now what we have tried to do is, as we do contracts with our third-party service logistics providers, we also call out that technology capability, as a prerequisite before we engage. Right?
Okay.
So
it should be compatible even with the third party or whichever vendor. It should be compatible to this data visibility to you.
Absolutely. And the way we have done it, I'll pick another example there is that, we have, when we do that delivery challans, we used to do it in olden days, it used to be manual. Right now we do electronic proof of delivery, right? And that data feeds in automatically into our, I would say the foundational data platform, and it is the key input to that end-to-end visibility. Now, we cannot do that if we don't have our third-party service provider or distributors also having that same capability. So it's an absolute must. And we've done that with, I would say a big number, close to 50 carriers within Asia Pac. So the third-party service logistic providers do have that capability. It's not an exception anymore. It's become the norm.
No.
Yeah.
That's
so,
the
it's
you
a very
will allow them only because if they are compatible to your systems and data visibility requirements.
Yes. And I think they also want to be part of that digitalization journey. It's not an option, right? It's
that's true.
Yeah, it's not an option anymore for any of us, neither for them nor for us. Because if you want to do it right product, right time, we want to do it cheaper, we want to do it faster, we want to be all superhumans. But it's a very cheap cost. So yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, and then their last question is in the whole geopolitical situation.
Yeah, basically, I think you answered it because of the visibility and compatibility. I think you can optimize and make the best use of everything. I mean, ultimately, your aim is to reach the right product at the right price to the right market in the right time.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and I think it also helps you to take those network optimizations, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So if you are able to visually, as well as, from a data-driven decision making, see the entire gamut, you can actually make a data-driven decision in terms of, how do you want to optimize your manufacturing? How do you want to optimize your sourcing, right?
Priti, I think you can take bold decisions.
Absolutely.
You do, because the factor of safety comes only from ignorance. If you are not able to visualize things, then you will apply a factor of safety of 3 to 5. But if you are absolutely sure about it, the factor of safety comes down to maybe even 1.
Yes. I mean, interesting you said that, but even with that, it's a journey, right? Because when we have system generated numbers, people will not take it immediately and say, oh, I trust the numbers, right? It's also a journey to be able to trust the numbers. So I think even when we get a demand plan, which would be run by, machine learning based on, what that pull factor is, that human intelligence will still have that element of doubt of, I know it better than what a machine learning can tell me, right? So I think it's over a period that you really start to trust those numbers and see that work. So I think that also is a change management journey that we've seen.
Fantastic. Nice listening to you, Preeti. I think I can imagine the complexity because my personal experiences introducing SAP systems in Bharat Petroleum for all those supply chain management. And when your company like Johnson & Johnson, a multinational operating in almost 90 countries and different markets and different culture and different multitude of products. So I think the complexity and making it to this level is absolutely really fascinating. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I think it's different and different, right? Like consumer goods, I think this whole gamut of digitalization is very advanced because of the
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, but
and
if you
the
look
demand
at
forecasting itself is
pharmaceuticals,
becoming it's a big challenge.
and if
the
you
one
put
is more of like taken granted. You know exactly estimate and demand forecasting is much more stable that way. Thank you. Yeah.
Pleasure. Any other questions, comments?
Let's take a couple of questions more. We have time.
Francis, there is a question in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there's a question from Jackson David. I guess the similar function that you talked about, I guess the crux of the question is the functionality that you mentioned. J&J is a big company. You have the means and wherewithal to develop systems like these complex systems. Other smaller companies, can they benefit from the same kind of systems and analysis? Are there off-the-shelf products or any ready solutions available that the smaller companies can utilize?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do believe that it's not about just. I feel the complexity in big companies are more, and I think smaller companies can actually be even more nimble, right? Because we have name a system and we have it. Actually, we don't need so many of them, right? Which makes it even more incredibly complex. So I think the smaller companies can go and pick, and there are many out there, right? If we talk about Microsoft Azure, we have Hadoop, then we have a lot of other data platform, Amazon workspace, cloud platform, Google. So I think there's no right or wrong here. I think different organizations go and pick based on what their organizational landscape is and how well it can integrate. But I don't see why smaller companies. I think smaller companies can essentially get this up and running faster, right? Because they don't have to deal with a lot of global enterprise architecture and different alignments and so on and so forth. So yeah, absolutely not a virtue or something that is a privilege of big companies for sure.
And they use Excel, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Well, in India, there's ONDC that's coming. That's like the UPI for logistics, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, if I remember it right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that's going to solve the logistics nightmare in India a lot, in the future. What's your take on that? I mean, if you have any early views about that.
So could you expand a little bit more so I can be very specific in the answer?
Yeah, ONDC is it's a common layer that's going to be built for. It's going to be something like an aggregator for logistics.
Yes.
So what happens in India? One of the problems in India now is that a lot of trucks, there are a lot of middlemen involved in booking the trucks, and trucks is the main mode of transportation. A lot of middlemen involved in booking trucks, and because of the inefficiencies in that manual mode of booking, often trucks fly empty. They might take a full load one direction and go empty, or partly loaded the other direction. That brings a lot of inefficiency. So to address that piece, India is now considering building ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. It's something like UPI. It's a layer that sits on top for banking. UPI, you're aware of it, right? So it's I mean, it's not fair to say it's an aggregator, but something like that. Because you also mentioned that you partner with third parties for logistics, for the the logistics portion of it. So I'm guessing it's a lot of these companies are going to benefit from the ONDC platform in the future. I don't know if you're involved in early analysis of ONDC or something like that. Do you have any views on? Okay.
Yeah, not involved in the early analysis, but yeah, I'll just give you my view based on something similar that we were trying to do in India, essentially what we were trying to do, it's kind of like having a unified or a single distributor portal across all the distributors, right? Pretty similar to what you're saying that can we have a unified platform where you can have the whole transport providers, all having not just that visibility, but also you optimize and and you can leverage across, right? I think some of the challenges there will be really to I don't think that capability is at the same level, right, across all. So that's where we have struggled to kind of bring in that unified, and I'm talking more in a distributor unification, a single kind of platform that unifies at a distributor level. And we struggled there merely because of I would say the level of maturity of each of the distributors have been very different. So I don't know how you can actually, I mean, to be able to define what that common or that minimum entry level should be, and everybody buying into that is it's, I don't know how practical it is, right? So it's still a challenge. I don't think we've gone through to, so I don't have a solution, I don't have an answer to it, but that's something I think we've seen as a struggle, and we've come to say that, look, we can't do that across all, but each of them. So for example, the transporters or the distributors in this case would only look at that. We don't want to deal with different companies, right? For us, we would want to just have one platform. However, it takes a lot for the different companies to also see that how are they going to unify with the whole data privacy and all coming into effect as well. So yeah, it's more of what challenges we've come across or roadblocks rather than solutions. So yeah, I don't have an answer on how we break that code. No, we haven't. But yeah, so these are some of the, I would say, early discussions that we've been in, but not directly involved in the in the ONDC.
Okay. All right.
I think, Francie, I hope through the national logistic policy, they are trying to bring all the players in the logistics and the transportation arena together. Otherwise, like what you're saying, there are isolated platforms and operators. Like BPCL used to have a program called Smart Fleet, but we were only taking care of the interest of the fuel requirement of transporters. And what value adds we do is that whenever their trucks fly, they can do on a digital platform loading of cash instead of giving cash to the driver. Then if they want to fuel, they can park their vehicle with the goods in the retail outlets on the highway. But now we have expanded from giving only fuel to even looking after the maintenance, even giving working capital, and also maintaining the vehicle, servicing the vehicle, safe parking. And now the whole platform is expanded. Even they can log in and say that the truck is empty from Delhi, and somebody can. So individually companies, the oil companies are doing something. There are even Nandan Nilekani has got one black buck. It's purely bringing all those transporters together. But the requirements of the transporters are much bigger. They want to buy get the finance to buy the trucks, then operate the trucks, then get the different companies' goods to be booked. Because you have short distance commercial vehicle, like go and pick the vegetables and deliver to the market and go back to their home. You have a long haul fleet going from here to Delhi to Calcutta to Chennai to coming back. There is a dedicated fleet. So this world is amazingly complex. And typically in India, it was operating with the middlemen, so much of them. But the technology, what it does is that eliminating the middlemen, lot of such flab and fat has been removed. So there's a lot
Right.
of resistance, there's a lot of challenges, but I think it's an area in which there's so much of improvement needs to be done.
Agree. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I think we have gone overboard with regards to time a little bit. That was a very interesting session, Preeti. Very interesting. I mean, I'm sure we can ask questions for another half an hour, 1 hour. But it's pretty late for you. So let me call upon Manoj, the Secretary of the Thrissur Management Association, for the vote of thanks.
Manoj, just 1 second before Manoj takes over, I would like to personally thank Preeti for the wonderful way you've handled the entire thing. You know, the age group which you are talking to is diverse. Many of us have retired. Many of us are very young, like Francis and Manoj. And your father is also there listening to you. And such a proud moment now for him and for me also. And I like that logo. I mean, what you've written there, reimagine, deliver, and excellent. It's really excellent. And we are thankful to you personally. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure. And I also learned a lot of things and very good discussion. Very happy to be, part of this forum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. We heard about supply chain management mainly due to the time of COVID only. Before that, we used to get the things done at our home or at the near shore. But when COVID came up, we were suddenly shocked from where we are getting all these things. Then the importance of supply chain management came into a layman's picture. I agree, George Paul sir and Francis and everyone must be knowing about supply chain management importance. But as a layman, when COVID struck, agree, we have to see how the things came to our doorstep. Thank you, Ms. Priti Jauhari, the head supply chain management, for giving a very insightful, experienced, filled presentation on your part on the supply chain management. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Mr. Narvikar, your father, who was full-time in the presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Anand Menon, sir, past president of TMA and the present president of AEA, for arranging this interesting session, as well as for bringing in Preeti to our midst. Thank you, CA GeoJob, Senior Vice President of TMA, for welcome address. Thank you, Francis, for effectively conducting the sessions. And thank you all the past presidents of TMA, AEA, all the members of AEA, all the MC members, executive committee members of AEA, and all the invited guests. Thank you very much and good night. Francis.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Preeti, once again.